Hello, Endeavor here. So tonight I'm going to be answering a survey by Argent Templar, and I will also be trying out this new platform. It's called StreamYards. I apologize for any technical difficulties in advance. This is the first time I'm using this, and we'll see how this goes. This is probably going to replace Google Hangouts on Air for me. So what this survey by Argent Templar is it's a survey of people with alternative political views. So generally people within the dissident right. What do they believe? Just different views they have on certain subjects. Before I start, just press 1 in the chat if you can hear me. I just want to make sure that this is all working well since this is a new platform. Just press 1 in the chat or just say that you can hear me before I start. Another announcement is that I will be making a new video this week. I know okay, so it looks like everyone can hear me, which is good. So a new video will be out probably within a day or two. I thought it was going to be faster than it was, but it's taking me a little bit longer. But yes, new content is on the way. Okay, so I'll start with the survey, and I've also linked to this survey in the description. So I encourage everyone, once this video is over, to go answer the survey. And once I finish answering the survey, I'll also answer some questions in case anyone has any about my answers to the survey or just anything else. Okay, so without any further ado, let's head over to the survey. Okay. Okay, here we are. So alternative political views studies. Can everybody see this? Okay, yes, it looks like everyone can. Okay, so I'll read this out first. The following is a survey created to examine the opinions of those with political views outside the mainstream, which are often referred to as alternative or dissident. Don't worry if you don't identify with any particular political ideology or movement. I'm interested in the options of people the opinions of people who move in these spheres in general. This survey is purely for research purposes, and all information collected will be kept anonymous. Okay, and you can ask Argent any questions about the survey if you have any. Okay, so let's begin. What is your gender? Obviously male. What is your age range? Right now I'm 24, so that would be right between 18 and 24. What religion do you most identify with? I'm a Baptist, so Protestant Christianity. I've been a Baptist for about 5 years now. I converted to Christianity about 5 years ago. I have looked into Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy, but I haven't decided whether or not I will change that position. I do right now. I am pretty comfortable being a Protestant, but that may change because I've looked into other religions. I do find them very interesting, and that may change in the future. But for now, I'll say Protestant Christianity. Okay, which broad political category best describes your views? Okay, so conservative, libertarian, third position, broadly right-winged, traditionalist, liberal, left socialist, anarchist, or communist, broadly left-wing, centrist, or you don't know. I mostly identify as a reactionary or neo-reactionary or whatever you'd like to call that. So traditionalist, although I usually go by the phrase reactionary. I have looked into a lot of third positionist views. I do find them very interesting. I do find nationalism an interesting idea, but for the most part, neo-reaction is the best label that I identify with. Okay, which of the following best describes your ideal economy? I don't have that strong of an opinion on an economy. I just think it's like whatever's best for a healthy society. But you need to have an understanding of like a culture, people group, and morality and things that like bind this group together. And you need that to decide what is the best economic system for them. I do think that in the past, I think I was more laissez-faire market economy than I am now. So the options I have here are laissez-faire market economy, regulated market economy, state-directed market economy, central planned or command economy, religious or traditional economy. So that would be things like distributism, Sharia, corporatist, post-industrial. Okay, that one's interesting also, or none of the above. I'll go with, because I generally think the free market's a good idea, but I'm certainly not one of these free markets absolutists. I think that there must be some regulation of businesses, and I mean, I've made the argument also that what the kind of the phenomenon of woke capital has kind of crushed a lot of the laissez-faire free market arguments for me, because the argument that the market will just punish these woke corporations, first of all, it's not punishing them very much. Second of all, they don't care. They'll push it anyway because they're pushing a social agenda and a societal agenda, really. So I'll probably go with religious or traditional economies. So I have looked into other economic models, and I do find a lot of them very interesting. It's something I'm not fully decided on right now. I'd say market economy is good, but you do need to have some social programs. You do need to have regulation, and you need to think of what's the best for society as a whole. I'll go with religious or traditional economy since I'm interested in alternative economic views. Okay, how hopeful are you regarding the future? I'll go with somewhat hopeful because I'm not black-pilled like a lot of people, but I do think that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. I think that's just inevitable for the economic reasons, the social reasons, and then just the way that we're being pushed by our society, our institutions of power. We're obviously going in a bad direction. There's no denying that. But I would say I'm somewhat hopeful because I do think that there is positive coming in the future. I don't know when that's going to be, and I don't know what that's going to look like. But I don't think that I'm certainly not black, but I don't think that the West is going to die, and Western civilization is just going to cease to exist, and our civilization is just going to go to complete shit. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. It's obvious. That's just undeniable. But I will say somewhat hopeful because, I don't think that I don't think that this current situation is going to last forever. It can't last forever. Okay, so somewhat hopeful. What is your favorite Western architectural era? Oh, that's a good question. So we have classical or neoclassical, Byzantine or neo-Byzantine, Gothic, early modern, modern, or postmodern. Well, certainly not modern, certainly not postmodern. That's a tough one because I really do like neo-Gothic architecture, especially here in Canada. I really love a lot of the old churches, the Parliament buildings, a lot of the old Victorian era architecture is very, very beautiful and very. It just kind of reminds me of Canadian heritage and our place that we used to have in the British Empire and the Victorian era, and it's just really fitting to the land also. So that one is one that I really do enjoy, but I will say I'm probably going to have to go with Baroque because that has to be one of my favorites. There's just a lot of Baroque architecture that's just absolutely beautiful, and you just can't go wrong with that. But yeah, basically anything that's not modern or postmodern, though, because I mean, I think I've talked about that enough on my channel before, but yeah, modern architecture shit, and there's just a lot of beautiful older architecture. And if you're interested in this, I highly recommend the page Architectural Revival. They have a Facebook group, a Twitter account. Definitely follow them because they do great work. And I mean, architecture is not my expertise, but I know good ones when I see it, and I know shit when I see it. So I'll go with Baroque because I'd probably say it has to be my favorite. Okay, accelerationism. Is the idea of accelerationism Oh, sorry, one second. Accelerationism is the idea that negative economic or societal forces should be supported and sped up as a way to create the conditions for radical change. What is your position regarding accelerationism? All right, I'm glad that Argent asked this question, because this is something I wanted to talk about, but I don't know when else I'll get the chance, because I don't want to do an entire video on it. I have a lot to say about accelerationism, and I'm not directing this towards Argent if you're hearing me, but because it is a legitimate question. There are a lot of people that think this. My position on accelerationism is that it's the most juvenile and delusional mindset anyone in our spheres can get into. It's the result of someone who spends their entire day on 4chan and not out in the real world, and not doing anything productive with either their life or to make any kind of change. And it's also just the result of someone who, spends their entire day thinking about, immigration or whatever, demographics, crime rates, and they spend their entire day with on the internet. And it just, the entire idea is kind of born out of someone that's really just internalized all the negative things too much, I think. And they've just essentially given up, really. And it's really just more of an excuse to be lazy than it is to actually bring about anything positive. You can't accelerate things. You don't, there isn't a button that you can just press oh, let's accelerate. That's not doable. And the only thing people that actually talk about this stuff do is sit on 4chan all day, or they infight with other people and destroy what actual productive people in the right-wing sphere do. Or the really bad ones go out and commit terrorist attacks, and that is the worst thing possible for our movement, because it gives the left the narrative it needs. It justifies all this censorship, and it just prevents any dialogues that are so necessary to have right now. So if you actually believe in accelerationism, if this idea gets into your mind, my best recommendation to you is get off the internet, go to the gym, find something productive, read a book, go to the park, just do anything else productive, because it is really a juvenile and delusional position to hold. The current situation is salvageable, and accelerationism is unnecessary. That's the obvious answer. And also, I'll also say that about this idea is that it can lead you into getting yourself in trouble, because when you start to think about things like collapses and civil wars and stuff like that, when you actually advocate that, or either advocate it, or if you suggest that something positive could come from that, that could be considered illegal or aiding and abetting illegality, which could get you in a lot of trouble and could get the entire right-wing sphere in a lot of trouble. So, the propertarians who talk about civil war and stuff they're absolutely delusional, because there's nothing that you yourself can do to make the situation worse so that it gets better. And another thing is, if you were the reason it was getting worse, no one's going to support you. If you're the reason that people don't have food or water, they don't just default to being right-wingers. That's just not how reality works. If people were in a situation where it was, feed themselves and their families, or starve, they're not going to just say, oh, well, now I'm a right-winger, now I'm going to overthrow this globalist regime. No, that's not how it works. If they're the ones that are providing people with their basic necessities, and you're the one taking them away by, I don't know, destroying water supplies or some shit like that the propertarians are suggesting, you're not going to win anyone over. So, okay, I think I've said enough about that. It's something I wanted to address. I'm sorry if I went on that one a bit, but the current situation is salvageable, and accelerationism is unnecessary. I mean, I guess if like the opposition is accelerating things, but you don't want to be the one to cause negative effects because no one's going to support you. You want, your enemies to be the ones that become unpopular. So anyway, I think I've said enough about that one. Let's move on. Okay, with regards to freedom of speech, what is your opinion? Freedom of speech is an unalienable right and must not be infringed. Freedom of speech is generally a good thing, but there are limits. Freedom of speech is a means to an end, not an end in itself. Freedom of speech needs to be restricted to a greater extent. Freedom of speech is tied to property rights, rules set by the owner of setting. I believe that freedom of speech is a means to an end. I'm not a free speech absolutist because, well, for many reasons. Because you can obviously, there's obviously the examples people bring up, like you can't just yell like fire in a crowded theater or something like that. But one of my biggest complaints with the classic liberal centrist crowd, people like Tim Pool and stuff like that, or the so-called free speech activists, is that they don't have anything interesting to say with their free speech. You can go on and on and on about how great free speech is, but the point of free speech is to be actually able to say something and actually be able to say something controversial, because if it wasn't controversial, you would have no problem saying it. That's why free speech is important. It's a means to an end. It's so that we can actually advance our message. Like, I mean, ideally, you would have a society where people were free to speak their minds, but also at the same time, you have to guard against subversion too. Like, I can understand not being a free speech absolutist. So if someone's outright advocating for the subversion of your society, I believe that you should prevent that. If it's like just something that is horrible for the moral, cultural fabric of and continuation of that land. So if someone's advocating for like, removing all your national monuments, to open your borders, to vilify your people, to deny your history, basically everything that the globalists are advocating now. In an ideal society, you probably would want to prevent subversion, but I am fully aware that it's probably the worst possible time to say that, because we're not the ones in power, so we're the ones kind of trying to subvert the liberal system as it exists in the West. So when you say that you're not a free speech absolutist, then you're kind of giving them the reason to censor you. But I also believe that, while I want free speech for obvious reasons, like it's a means to an end, it's a way to advance our political goals, I do kind of understand why the establishment is censoring people now. Not that I agree with it, but like the reason I had said, or like kind of what I had said, like you need a societal narrative to uphold, to uphold the power structure of your society, but to people form their worldviews based on narratives, and you kind of do need to have this consensus that drives society in a certain direction. And the problem is that our consensus is the egalitarian one. It's the anti-white one. The West is horrible narrative. That's the dominant narrative, and they're trying to crush free speech right now against that narrative, because they know damn well that they need to uphold that narrative in order to advance their agenda. Now, if I was in a society that I would want, so a system more similar to mine, I could you would still need to have a societal narrative like that. The fact that we have a narrative and a consensus and a cathedral, like Moldbug said, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The bad thing is that the one that we have is bad, not that it exists at all, because I think all societies really just function that way. And most will probably suppress people that are trying to just outright subvert them. So free speech is a means to an end. I think it's generally a good thing, but I don't think you're going to have unlimited ones. So I kind of agree with this one also, but I mostly see it as a means to an end. I care more about the continuation of Western civilization than free speech. I just see free speech as a tool needed to achieve that. Okay, with regards to capital punishment, the death penalty, in what cases would you say it's permissive? It is permissible. Okay, this is something I'm not really decided on. I generally don't think it's a good. It's generally not a good thing. I'm opposed to it in most cases, but I also think maybe there are some cases where it's necessary. The answer I'll probably go with is exceptional cases. So serial killers, terrorists, traitors. Yeah, I can understand why you'd impose capital punishment for that. Homicide, I mean, if it's like a very gruesome one, then yes, there are certain cases where it's probably justifiable. I don't know if I would prescribe it in every single case. Like, I don't think it should be mandatory, but maybe it could be like an option. But yeah, I'd say that in exceptional cases. So maybe it could be an option, but I don't think it necessarily like every homicide needs to be the death penalty. I think that it's something that could be decided by a judge. But it's something I'm also not that decided on, but I'll probably go with that answer. Okay. Romantic relationships and marriage with members of a different ethnic group are, spicy one. Okay, let's not say anything that could get my channel taken down here. Okay, are okay with regardless of the other person's race, are okay with some races but not others, are okay with members of the same race, or okay with members of the same or only okay with members of the same ethnicities or ethnic group. It depends on whether or not you intend to get married and have children. That's a tough one. Like, I don't think that it should be banned. That interracial relationships should be banned. I can understand that they're not the norm. That's just clear if you look at surveys, and especially amongst people of European descent. They're the rare. White people are the rarest, most unlikely to have an interracial relationship. Though I probably wouldn't support like just outright banning it. I do understand maybe having it the norm, and because it already is the norm. And I do think there is a lot of propaganda. I mean, you can just look at like every single advertisement on TV today. It's always they'll always have a black man and a white woman in the advertisement, and there's clearly an agenda being pushed with that one. I mean, for me personally, it's just like out of the question. But I don't know if I would like say it's outright banned. But I think that it can be. You can have social norms around that, and that's probably the best you need. I'll go with this one because I basically think people generally prefer their own. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just the norm. That statistically is the norm, and there's no problem with having like social norms to enforce that. But I don't think it should be like enforced by the state. Okay, I'll go with that. Okay. Please choose one of the following below. If none options ally with your opinion, choose the best that represents it. Okay. Sex between consenting adults is acceptable and or moral in almost all cases, even if the couple is unmarried. Acceptable and moral only in the context of a committed relationship and or involves the parties are in love, even if the couple is unmarried. Acceptable and or moral between only a married couple. Acceptable and moral only between a married couple, provided that no form of birth control is used. I'll go with the second one. So I believe that it's acceptable and or moral only in the context of a committed relationship and or if the parties involved are in love, even if the couple is unmarried. Because I can understand. Basically, my take is that my take on relationships is if you find someone, you should commit to them and commit to raising kids and having a family and that. And if you do that, then in my books, what you're doing well. In my books, you're not doing anything amoral. So I don't necessarily think that sexual relationships outside of marriage are immoral if it's a committed relationship and the parties involved are in love and they're already essentially a couple, even if they aren't married yet. But it would be, and I do think, as long as there's like a commitment to each other, and hopefully down the line they would be looking towards like creating a family. Though I'd say that it's amoral if it just becomes about hedonism and not about the relationship, where it's just like that's when it really becomes something that's destructive. Because the reason that things like what do you call it, hookup culture or Tinder or all these things are destructive is because it takes it takes sexuality away from the goal of forming relationships and forming marriage and then forming families to just about feelings, and that's when it becomes destructive in my opinion. So I don't necessarily think that sex outside of marriage is amoral if it's with a couple that is in a committed relationship. And also another thing is that it's basically been the norm for quite a while. It is true that even like before the 1950s, a lot of couples were involved sexually before they were married. I think the important thing is just what your long-term goal and what you and if you can raise children well. I think that if you have a long-term goal, you commit to each other and you raise children well, then you're doing well by my books. Divorce. Should it be available upon request? Should only be in specific situations with adultery or abuse? Divorce is never permissible or other. I'll say that certainly not available upon request, because that is a huge problem. That it's caused like all these families to fall apart. And yeah, no fault divorce has been a disaster, really. And not only does it like destroy couples, but it destroys like the upbringing of children in many cases. And so what I'll say is, but however, I do think that, if there actually is like violence and abuse or adultery in a marriage and it's like just not working at all, I think that would be destructive to keep it going. So I will say that only in specific situations, but I would say that would be very specific. Like it can't just be like they had an argument. It would have to actually be like that the relationship was just not beneficial for anyone anymore, and it was just very destructive. Or like, they just like had left each other and they haven't seen each other in like 10 years or something like that. But yeah, I would agree though that no fault divorce is a huge problem, because it's just caused so many family units to fall apart. Okay, so I'll go with that one. Please choose one of the following, even if none. Options ally with your views. Okay. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be completely legal to produce and distribute, legal to produce and distribute, but public displays are restricted or banned, illegal to produce and distribute, but legal for private consumption, illegal to produce, distribute, or possess for private consumption. I'm going to say that it should be illegal to produce and distribute. Porn's a major problem also. Like it's just like what I'd said with divorce, that you could look at other people know more about this than me, but it just has created so many like docile, dysfunctional, depressed, lonely, computer dwelling, wanking young men who should be out there forming relationships. They should be out there finding women. They should be out there just doing something with their life. And it is something that is very destructive. I think that the best thing would be, though, to make it less available. I don't think it should be illegal for consumption, because then you'd have to arrest basically every single man in the Western world. I more see the people that are pushing porn, and yes, I know who it is that's pushing it. I know who it is that created the industry, and I know who's behind the industry. I'd rather go after the producers of it and prevent that than have to arrest like then have to arrest, like, guys that do it in their do it in their bedrooms, because basically I just think there needs to be better systems around to get those men out of their bedrooms and into the real world and become more functional people. But yes, the people that produce pornography, I think that should be illegal, because it is something that a lot of young men struggle with, and it has caused, just like no fault of war, it has caused a lot of problems in the West. Okay. Global warming, climate belief, climate change is the belief that over the last several hundred years, there has been an unusually fast and unprecedented rise in global temperatures that is rapidly changing the Earth's climate and is or will have major impacts on both human societies and the natural world. Do you believe that global warming and climate change is real and primarily caused by humans, real and is primarily a natural process, real and is caused equally by humans and nature? The Earth's climate is always changing, but the current degree of potential damage has been exaggerated. The Earth is actually cooling. I really don't have that much of an opinion on climate change. It's an issue that doesn't interest me at all. I think it's real because there is data that shows that it's real, but I don't really know the implications of it, nor have I researched it. So I really don't have that strong of an opinion on it anyway. The one thing I will say is that, yes, I do think it's true. I do think it's real. And I do think it's like something that should be considered. It should be looked at and potentially action taken. But 99% of the shit that comes from globalists and the left and the shit libs about climate change, almost all of that is bullshit, because it's just used to push another agenda. Like I saw in the National Post the other day, is it amoral to have children? And of course they show a white baby on the cover of the article, and it goes into why the Westerners shouldn't have children. And it's just pure propaganda. They're not fooling anyone when they post this stuff. They want there to be less children of European descent, obviously, and they want to import people from the third world to replace you. It just goes without saying, because the exact same people who are calling for you to not have kids due to climate change are the exact same people that tell us, oh, well, we have an aging population. We need to bring in people from Africa to replace our old aging population. Who's going to pay for our Social Security? Yeah, all of that is just grade A bullshit. So I'm going to say the Earth's climate is always changing, but the current degree of potential damage has been exaggerated. I don't know what the actual implications are, but the agenda that's being used it's being used as part of the agenda to justify globalism. I think basically I wish we had a better ruling class, one that actually cared about our civilization. Then it's something we actually could have an honest discussion about. But right now it's like an issue that is just used to push a different agenda. With regards to creationism versus evolution, which position is closest to your own? Young Earth creationism, old Earth creationism, theistic evolution, so the belief in God and evolution, or atheistic evolution? I'll say theistic evolution. I think evolution is real. I think the evidence is overwhelming. But I am a theist, and I don't think that by any means disqualifies the existence of a God. So theistic evolution. Which of the following closest to your ideal system of healthcare? So, okay. Out of the following, which is your closest ideal system of healthcare? Single payer, social health insurance. So that would be government and employees contribute to sickness funds and pay healthcare costs. Basic public coverage and the options of additional private insurance. Private health insurance, but with needs-based subsidies, or a completely private healthcare system. I'm going to go with single payer. I think it works in Canada. I think it worked in European countries. I know a lot of people might not like to hear this. A lot of Americans, maybe. I do think that it is something that is generally good, because you don't want to have things like, you don't want to have people like paying $40,000 or else they're going to die. I think it is a system that is, in my opinion, a bad one. So I do think that single payer healthcare is good. My general position on most social policies like single payer healthcare is that, or social programs rather, social programs, is that they work well in a a highly productive, socially cohesive society. So one like, Sweden before mass immigration, maybe I'm not that socialist, but it's undeniable that they did have a very high quality of life. Now, there's plenty of criticisms I have of those systems. Also, I'm certainly not like a Bernie Sanders kind of socialist or anything like that. But I do think a lot of social programs are good things. They're not like, I definitely am not one of these, socialism bad, killed 100 million people, Turning Point USA crowd. But the problem is that with welfare states in the West right now is that we have mass immigration from the third world. And the populations that are coming in aren't productive. They're not paying into the welfare system or the social programs that we have. And basically they're just leeching off of them. So they don't work because you have only a smaller and smaller percentage of the population actually paying into them. And if people aren't productive, then you're not going to be able to just pay for this. Like, this is where the socialists are wrong. It's that they don't understand that you need prosperity to actually have these things. And I also think that social programs they should be things that are multi-generational. So the work that your parents did, your grandparents did, your great-grandparents did, you should be reaping the rewards of that, not some foreigner who just came in from Somalia. It should be something that's passed down, because that's what they had in mind when your ancestors were working the fields. They were thinking about a better life for their children, and that's what they set up these programs for. So, I mean, I can understand these within the context of a healthy, cohesive, strong, unified society. I do think they are generally a good thing. Not everything, but I do think that it's good to have some. I do think public healthcare would be good in one of those. So I support that. And I also I really don't think that, I just think I've never had any problems myself with the Canadian system. So I'll go with that. Single payer. With regards to law-abiding citizens, firearms should be legal without restriction, legal but with ban on certain types of weapons, automatics, assault weapons. Argent, assault weapons aren't a thing. That's one thing that drives me crazy when liberals say, we need to ban assault weapons. Well, there's no such classification as an assault weapon. Sorry, Argent. Okay. Long guns only. Shotguns, bolt-action rifles should be legal. Possession of firearms should not be legal. Okay, what's my opinion on this? I strongly support the right to own firearms. I think it's I think it is generally a good thing, and it's, again, like in a safe, cohesive, high IQ European society, generally there's really not that much gun crime. Like, they always point to America and say, well, America has all this gun crime because guns are so easily available. Well, again, you have to look at who's actually committing that gun crime, and then liberals are not that keen on talking about that, because if you actually only look at white Americans, who are the most likely to be, they per capita they are far more likely to legally possess a firearm, but their firearm murder rate is not any higher than most countries in Europe. So countries like, I think that white Americans actually per capita commit less gun crime and gun murder than people in Finland, which has a very low murder rate. So yeah, we know that it's not necessarily the guns that are causing the murders. So yes, I definitely think that gun ownership is a very good thing for a society and should be legal. I can kind of understand some restrictions, maybe on fully automatic rifles, or maybe on like, obviously like RPGs or things like that, or hand grenades. I can understand why that would be banned. But I think almost every kind of firearm should be legal. I do think though that people need that I do think that what's more important is firearm safety. Like, I do think that people should be, if not required, strongly encouraged to do firearm safety courses, because people with firearms don't scare me. Untrained people with firearms scare me. Because I think it's something that it requires a lot of responsibility. I think it should be perfectly legal, but it is still a big responsibility to own a gun, and you definitely need to know what you're doing. So what I'll say is, I don't know if it without restriction, because then that would mean like, any kind of gun. I'll say legal, but ban on certain types. But I mean, when I say certain types, I mean like, maybe things like RPGs shouldn't be legal. But other than that, and maybe like, some modified guns that are designed for like commit crimes and stuff like that. But yeah, almost every kind of gun should be legal, I think. I think that the more important thing is A, who actually owns them, and B, and then another thing I forgot to bring up is that you can look at a lot of the European countries that have high gun ownerships, and none of them have high firearm crimes. But then when you look at countries in South America, which have a lot more restrictions, but guns are purchased illegally, the gun crime is just through the roof. So what I'll say is legal, but only bans on only a certain number. But almost every firearm should be legal, and I think that firearm safety needs to be strongly encouraged. Okay, consumption of cannabis or marijuana by adults should be fully legal, decriminalized but not legal, legal only for medicinal purposes, illegal but not enforced, illegal and enforced, or other. I'll say legal only for medical purposes. I can understand. That it is a medicinal drug, and it does have some medicinal benefits. I am more opposed to the kind of the degenerate culture that comes around cannabis, and the kind of degenerate lifestyle that it engenders in people. That's my biggest criticism of it. So I'd say that I don't think it should be legal to sell. I don't think like drug dealers should be allowed to sell it. I think that I'm probably against it as a recreational drug. I think maybe like the punishment should just be like a fine or something like that. I don't think people should go to jail for using it, but I'd say it should be avoided. I mean, I'm more against just the degenerate culture that comes around it than the substance itself, because so I'll say legal only for medicinal purposes. With regards to transhumanist technology such as genetic engineering, nanomachines, advanced prosthetics, neutral implants, which of the following is the closest to your opinion? Okay, this is something that scares the hell out of me. A lot of these transhumanist technologies, I think that it's something that's scary going forward in modernity, because how much of our humanity is going to be taken away by these? Like, how much more? Like, we already say that. I already kind of believe that we're living a very artificial lifestyle with a lot of just a lot of the things that we're missing. Just how atomized, how much technology we use, just how we never talk to each other anymore. And this is like just takes it to a whole new level. I can understand it for like medical purposes. So if it does actually benefit someone, but you can't go too far, because it takes humanity in a very scary direction. So I'll say should be greatly restricted, if not outright banned. Okay. Which background best describes your primary racial or ethnic background? White European. I'm ethnically Scottish. I'm Canadian. Canada is my nationality. Most of my ethnicity is from Scotland. I believe I have some Irish in there, and maybe some other European. I would like to take that test. I haven't done that yet, but maybe I'll do a video on that when I do. Okay, have you ever suffered or been diagnosed with any of the following? No. Which best describes your current form of employment? Okay. So which of the following best describes your current employment situation? Full-time employed. Which of the following best describes your education level? I have a post-secondary degree. What geographic region do you come from or live in? I'm from North America. I'm Canadian. Okay, so that's the survey. I encourage everyone to take it yourself. It's Argent Templar running the survey. I've had him on my channel before. Great channel. He does good videos, and he's doing this more for like what's the phrase for it? To find data based on dissident right-wing views, see what people believe in our spheres, and yeah, it should be interesting to see the results. So yeah, I'll probably go on for another 15 minutes. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat. I haven't been reading the chat because I've been reading the survey. Yeah, just post any in the chat if you'd have any questions about my answers or anything going. Oh, sorry, 1 second. Yeah, let's just stop the screen share. There we go. Okay, so yeah, any questions you can post in the chat right now, or about my answers, or about anything else. Have you seen Kyle about this tall? Nope. Regarding the accelerationism question, do you think the current situation is salvageable? Depends what you mean by salvageable. Like, are we going to get the West of 1965 back? No, but something good can come out of it. Definitely. I mean, like, you know, think about all these different eras in European history when we've had all these disasters. Something good always came out of it. So to say that the situation is not salvageable at all is, in my opinion, first of all, not incorrect, but not only that, but it leads people down into a destructive mindset. And it's really just a excuse to be lazy, really. I find people that call for accelerationism just sit in their bedrooms all day, whining about the world and not actually doing anything. So yes, it's salvageable because something good can come out of it. Something good can come out of it. Don't say that the West is not over yet. We're not by a long shot. Okay. What software are you using for live streaming right now? I'm using StreamYard. This is the new software I'm probably going to be using for streaming. Seems pretty good so far. I haven't had any problems. Similar to Google Hangouts on Air, pretty easy to use. I'll probably go with this. Okay. Never before has there been such a demographic change on this scale. Yeah, that is true. But you have to also remember that there has been other eras, like, you know, in the 14th century, a third of Europeans died from the Black Plague. And, you know, it might have looked like back then that it was over and, you know, nothing was going to, you know, all of European civilization was going to die, literally die. And that didn't happen. So something good came out of it. The Renaissance came out of it only 100 years later. I think that, yeah, and the other thing is, I think that in regards to the demographic situation, and I kind of, I've said a lot about this on my channel. I think that the more important thing is just have control over your own borders, because you could easily fix the problem if you actually controlled your own. If we actually had control over our own governments, which we don't. The reason that it's a problem is because it's being facilitated, not because it's an actual demographic problem. If there actually was a real effort to just stamp out the problem tomorrow and fix it, we'd be fine. I mean, you could easily implement a program to like pay people to return, or well, first of all, you just have to close the borders and have pro-NATO policies and stuff like that. The problem is that the elites are facilitating the Great Replacement. If you actually had people in power that were committed to preserving it, I don't think that it would be as bad of a situation as it is. I guess the question is, can we get that in enough time? Okay. What is your stance on the JQ? Don't want to get my channel banned here. Okay. What other views on technology leading to eternal life youth would you like to become immortal if you had the chance? What are my views on that? I just don't know, but I don't know if humanity is meant to become immortal, at least not in the physical world. I do believe in an afterlife, but I don't know how we could cope with that. I mean, I could be wrong. It could be a great thing. It could be something that we are able to cope with in the future. I think my goal is not like to slow down change. I don't want to like be someone who is like saying that we have to go back to being like Luddites. Though I will admit the Amish are doing a damn good job at beating modernity. They have like 7 kids per family, and you know they have these great cohesive communities. But I'm not advocating going back to that. It's the biggest the challenge is conquering modernity. It's finding ways to actually cope with the modern world, and I think that's really the challenge. Not necessarily like preventing the technological advance in the future. It's coping with it. The plague affected. The plague badly affected people's worldview, and the Renaissance was a mixed blessing. Well, the point I was trying to make is that, like, you know, that was a time where all of European civilization could have been destroyed, but it didn't, and something came out of it. I'm like I said at the beginning, I'm fairly positive that something good will come out, but if we work for it, that is. I mean, it's a self-fulfilling pulse. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're black pilled and you just think the West is going to die. Okay. Muslims have cohesive communities, high birth rates, and live in the modern world. That is true. Although it is true though that wealthier Muslim countries have lower birth rates, so that they are going down in those countries too. But it is true that many of these Muslim countries, like the one that I looked at, like the UAE, it does seem like it's one that is actually running a good, strong, cohesive society with a traditional culture, but also technologically advanced. So it's definitely worth looking at the Muslim world. I don't want Islam in the West. I advocate for its removal and its having no influence whatsoever. However, I do think that it existing in the Middle East is not a bad thing, and there are lessons you could learn from it. But I don't want it here, obviously. I'm a Christian, obviously, so I prefer either Christianity or some form of, or some Western version. Have you ever heard of Nick Fuentes? If so, would you go on his channel? Yes, I have heard of Nick Fuentes, and would I go on his channel? No, because he blocked me, so I can't go on his channel. He blocked me on Twitter. Don't know why, but that's not happening. What are some YouTubers you recommend watching? Charlemagne, Distributist, Morgoth, Millennial Woes, even though he's kind of left YouTube, but hopefully he comes back to it. Who are some of my other favorites? Laura Towler has a great channel. I had her on my channel a few weeks ago. On the Offensive, another excellent channel. Who else do I enjoy? That's a good list of channels there. Keith Woods is making interesting videos. He's a relatively new channel. How am I supposed to cope with automation and AI when there are too many people that simply are not able to get the right skills due to their genetic and mental limits? I can't become an engineer. I don't know, man. Find something that works for you. I'm sure that there's some field that you could fit into. If not, I don't know. Don't know enough about you. Sorry, Louis. While the cost of living is rising, that's a huge problem also. Cost of living, that's one thing that's killing people. Iconoclast. Yeah, he's another good channel. I do enjoy his videos. About Argent and his audience wants Catholic Saudi Arabia. Catholic Saudi Arabia. I probably wouldn't I mean, I don't want like Saudi Arabia. I don't think like people should be like stoned to death. I don't think, women should be forced to wear burqas and stuff like that. But like, I want a more traditional society, but that doesn't necessarily mean, you want, it doesn't mean you necessarily like want, Sharia law. And secondly, you have to be realistic. So like, you're not going to have, a farm with 7 kids and a stay-at-home wife while you, work on the fields. Like, it's just not a reality that people can live in these days. At least not the majority of people, especially not in cities. Like, it's just not the reality. I think do the best you can, and that's really all you can ask. Way of the World, another great channel. I like his videos too. Have you ever watched Vox Day? I haven't. I've heard of him. I haven't watched him though. Vincent James Allsup. Yeah, they're both James Allsup, Vincent James are good channels for news. Yep. The burqa laws are gone. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay. Vertigo Politics got purged. He recreated his channel, but I think that one got purged also. I really enjoyed his video on California. That was a pretty damn good video. He made good videos. I don't know if he's coming back though. Do you know Trudel Tom? I've seen a few of his videos. I've never interacted with him. I tried to reach out to him once, but nothing ever came of it. Now I've heard that he's purged his channel and Discord and Twitter. So I don't know what's going on with him. Origins of the Avatar. It's the HMS Endeavour, the ship that James Cook sailed around the world on his first voyage when he discovered Australia. I love the history of the British Empire, colonialism, and stuff like that. So I chose that. It was a cool sounding name, so I chose that as my avatar. Okay, so yeah, if there's any more questions, I'll probably go on for another 5 minutes or so. Under MSB, Saudi Arabia has become like the rest of the GCG. No heavy-handed laws on women that aren't actually religious, but from old Arab tribalism, but still very religious. I mean, I don't know that much about Saudi Arabia. I don't like research it that much. Yeah, I mean, my policy is, I guess, like you'd want a more traditional society, but maybe not. But you'd have to also be realistic, and you're obviously not going to the absolute extreme with that. What are your thoughts on paganism? Okay, I better not get like stupid comments about this. Okay, basically, look, if you're interested in it, fine. If you want to research it, fine. If you think that it's an interesting cultural, interesting part of European culture to kind of celebrate, sure. But my problem is that I don't even see how you can practice it as a religion. And I don't see how that you can really even, how that could ever even become, the West's religious consensus. And I don't even know if Christianity will be that again. I think it has the best chance, because with Christianity, there actually are institutions around this. Problem is the institutions are cucked, but there actually is like a big framework and huge numbers. I think that's a lot more realistic of a goal, but I don't know what the future of the West's spirituality will be. And I don't even think that it necessarily has to be like one that's absolutely uniform. There can be others. My biggest problem with paganism is just the idiots on the internet with it, that, they'll basically just go on about, oh, Christ cuck this, but then they don't practice this religion because you can't practice it. There's no institutions around it. Religion has a lot to do with community, institutions, priests, theology. All this stuff goes into religion, and if you don't have that, you can't really even have that religion, because it just becomes some like creepy obsession in your head. Like, one thing is that Christianity, for example, is something that you can only do with other people. You need other people to do it. And I don't know how you'd even have that with paganism. The other thing is that there's so many different forms of paganism. There's Roman, Greek is obviously based off the Greeks, Viking. There's so many different ones. Which one are you celebrating? Like, I really just see it more as I just get more I just get more like obnoxious comments about it than actually seeing anything coming out of that that's interests me. But if it's interesting to you, by all means, research it. Maybe you could do some art, become interested in it. If it's interesting to you, by all means, but stay away from the like LARPing that's involved with it. Would you be for the West to not have the problems we do today? No, because the problem is with this. We're in a position right now that the West is very well. It's imploding. It's a civilization that's dying and falling apart. Its pillars are rotten. Imperialism and expansionism and going across the globe. That was done at a time when Europe was civilizationally confident, strong, spiritually strong, economically strong, and technologically, and ambitious to it. It just the spirit was totally different, and that was why they were actually able to pull it off. Today, like our goal needs to be to retake our own countries and actually ensure that there is going to be a future for the West, because we're not even in control of our own countries today. So the people that are going off and attacking the Middle East, that's not within our interests. So empire building, I talked about this with On the Offensive. I have a very soft spot for imperialism. I do think it is like a kind of a civilizational project that gives a civilization a greater purpose. I do think it should be done, peacefully. You shouldn't go off like, genociding other people, obviously. But I do think that, for what it was, for its time, it was a good thing. And plus, I mean, look at all these nations like Canada, Australia, America, South Africa, New Zealand that were created. I know that they're in the decline now, but that wouldn't exist otherwise. But imperialism is something for a different era. It's not for our era, and I highly doubt I'll live to see that become a reality. Okay. So just so you know, if you expand the empire, you expand it for the left. Yes, exactly. Because expanding the quote unquote West right now, that's expanding global homo. That's not expanding European civilization. Like they're not going to the Middle East. Like there isn't going to be a Christian cathedral in the Middle East. There isn't going to be there isn't going to be European populations like going across the world like there was in the past. What you're going to have is that the Middle East becomes liberal. You get that, like, they have Walmarts everywhere and things like Tinder and transgenderism and stuff like that in the Middle East, and feminism, and then mass immigration, of course. And yeah, it's expanding global homo right now, not expanding European civilization. Okay. The Middle East used to be mostly Christian. It did. Yeah, that is true. Unfortunately. I mean, I'd like to see, in a perfect world, it would be good to see that again, but I don't think I'll ever live to see that. And it's certainly not the Middle East should not be anyone in the West's priority right now. The West's priority, our priority is our own nations, and that's it. Like to think about the rest of the world right now is with outside of the context of how it affects your own nation is, in my opinion, a bad idea. Okay. So yeah, if there's any more, I'll maybe answer a couple. I'll answer a few more, and then I'll probably end this stream. To be fair, though, it may be a good idea to give liberalism to the Middle East to handicap it. Now that I think about it, that is actually one thing I crossed my mind too. Would it be a good idea to subvert those ones? But again, though, remember, it's not us doing it. So it's with the intention of, remember, it's globalism. Like the reason they call it globalism is that it's the globe. So the goal is to do that to every society, and European civilizations first in the chopping block. So that the Middle East becoming liberal would be bad for us too, because it would just result in more mass immigration into the West, because that's what the people in command want right now. Okay, so I'll probably end the stream here. It's been a good stream so far. Definitely go check out Argent survey. It's linked in the description. Fill it out for him. And yeah, I'll probably be using StreamYards going forward. It seems like a good, decent platform. And yeah, I'll be having another video coming out this week. Been working on it for quite a while. It's going to be, I was planning on doing a short video before I did my next Enlightenment one, but this one turned into a much longer one. So apologies. It's going to be a bit of a long video, but well, I guess that'll be a good thing. But yeah, then after that, I'll probably go back to making my next Enlightenment video. Opinions on the incoming Canadian elections. Maxime Bernier's party seems like the best option. They've moved significantly to the right on immigration, and he even says that he wants to revoke the Multiculturalism Act, which that would be an excellent development if that could happen. So definitely, People's Party of Canada, I would support. They seem like, maybe obviously they're not going to win the election, but it's definitely good to at least make a statement, and hopefully that it builds a broader right-wing populist movement in Canada, like we're seeing in places like in Europe and what Trump used to be. Yeah, so that's basically my take on the Canadian election. Other than that, Trudeau's shit, obviously. NDP are shit, and Andrew Scheer is shit. So yeah, People's Party of Canada. Any philosophers you recommend? Thomas Hobbes, one of my favorite. Depends what you want to start. If you want to start off, definitely I'd say start with reading Aristotle. He has a lot of interesting books, and basically for anyone, he's interesting. I'm currently reading some of the Enlightenment guys because I'm doing a series of videos on them. Other interesting philosophers, G.K. Chesterton's very interesting. Some of the modern neo-reactionaries are interesting. Moldbug, Nick Land, Hans Hermann Hoppe. I know he's more of a libertarian, but I guess he fits into that camp. Yeah, and I would like to read Spangler, but I haven't got around to him yet. Okay, so that's probably going to be where I call the stream. Okay, well, thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again shortly.